Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Courtside with Beilinson Tennis, part of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. We have with us again Hall of Famer, my co-host, Steve Flink. Steve has been on site pretty much. I think he's been on site every day since the tournament has started. We're excited to have him on, excited to hear some insight. Steve, we're obviously got to start with Serena, but before we even talk about Serena, it's been great every day you've been there, huh?
It has. No, it's been, this is the stage of the tournament where things seem to really take off. Once we get down to the third round on is when I enjoyed even more, because seeds versus seeds, and you start anticipating those big quarters and semis. And yeah, it's been an excellent first week, and we've been lucky with the weather. We may be getting some storms coming in starting tomorrow, I think, but fortunately we've got those roofs, so we'll be in good shape.
Yeah, let's timestamp it for the listeners. It is Sunday morning, so the round of 16 matches are all set on both the men's and women's side. So I'm gonna, once we're done with this, I'm gonna do my best to get this edited and out to everybody, so everyone will be able to hear this before first ball today. So with that, Steve, let's start with Serena. I know I have some thoughts, but everyone wants to hear your thoughts. You've been on site. Absolutely nobody saw her playing as well as she did these first three rounds. Obviously, we'll talk about the third one with Ali a little bit more, but again, we gave credit to Renee last time, and she had a Renee Stubbs on her team, but my gosh, again, no one saw Serena playing as well as she has these first three matches. When you take a look at what she did in Wimbledon, Canada, and Cincinnati.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, those did not go well at all. She lost 3 out of 4 matches in the 3 tournaments you mentioned, beaten in the first round of Wimbledon, won 1 match on the hard courts over the summer, so it was not encouraging. And so we couldn't know for sure she could even survive the first round. And I thought there were shaky moments in the first round, a 2-love lead in the first set, and then went down 3-2, game point for 4-2, and pulled herself together and played a great second set. Then she goes to Connovate. I thought that Serena, she talked afterwards about not feeling any nerves, nothing to lose in this tournament. Hadn't felt that way since '98, but I saw moments of tightness. She didn't serve out the first set against Connovate, double faulted it away, and I said, okay, that's not a good sign. And she managed to win the breaker, lost the second 6-2, and then eventually came through 6-2 in the third, but there were a few anxious moments. She handled them well. She played well. Connovate looked a bit like a deer in the headlights, a little bit frightened, understandably, dealing with a crowd like that was so vociferous and predictably so on Serena's behalf. And then finally against Tomljanovic, it all caught up with Serena. Once again, she didn't serve out a set, 5-3 first set. And then lost 4 games in a row, and then looked like she had the second set at 5-2, the marathon game, all the set points, and eventually didn't win it until the tiebreak. It took so much out of her, David, that even though she led 1-love 40-15 third set, there was a glimmer of hope there that she might reach the round of 16. Then she never won another game. But I thought Tomljanovic played really well. I thought her returning was unbelievable. I mean, the first set, she broke 3 times. She broke 2 more in the second and 3 more in the third. And to break Serena 8 times across 3 sets is a great effort. And I didn't think Serena served that badly. And I also thought Serena looked a bit frozen at times in the third when Tomljanovic would sort of pin her in one corner and then rifle a forehand to the other for an outright winner. And Serena was caught off guard by a lot of those. But still, you're right. And then we have the last game with Serena saving all those match points spectacularly. And so it was really the right way for her to go out. It was not a typical 6-1 set. That last game was so long and arduous, and it was closer than the score would indicate, but she could go out proudly, and she did.
That last game, as you referred to, Serena saved 6 match points. She actually had a couple break points, Steve. I want to ask you this. That crowd in that last game was crazy. And, she always goes out fighting. Serena has fought through her entire career, and it's 5-1, right? If Serena converts one of those break points at 5-2, the place erupts. There's now a changeover. Think of the pressure that Alia had. And I want to talk about Alia too, because she was stone cold killer mentality to do what she did in that atmosphere. But if Serena had converted that game, would it have completely shocked you if Serena wins that third set 7-5?
A little bit, not completely, but I will say this, you know, Serena's almost 41 now. The great comebacks that we think of as Serena were in her 20s and 30s. I thought she looked physically, not in that last game because she was going for broke, but on the other hand, it was a lot of hit and miss in that last game. She hit those great winners, and then when she'd have a chance to get back to break point, she'd go for the forehand and hit it 2 feet long. So no doubt the crowd it would have been tough. And Tomljanovic, she would have had to think about it for that changeover would have been difficult, but she still would have had that cushion, and she was returning so well. She would have then had 2 more chance to try to break Serena to close it, then a second chance to serve it out, and another chance to break Serena to close it. I really don't think we would have reached that point because I don't know whether Serena would have had it in her physically. It was already 3 hours. So to win it was 3.5 hours. And she was in remarkably good shape considering how little tennis she played in the last year. But I think that it would have shown. We'll never know. She alluded to it. She said, "Oh, I've come back from 5 when she's done it once against." She did that against Clijsters at the Australian Open once, which was down 5-1 in the third in match points and won the match. And so I wouldn't put it past her, but I think at this age, considering how little tennis she played, I still tend to doubt it. But the crowd would undoubtedly have been frenzied, and that's not easy to be on the opposite side of the net when that's going on.
Yeah, I want to hit on a couple more things again because it is Serena. It's most likely her last singles match. You know, we saw so many signs of her greatness throughout her career, and in a microcosm in this match, even, you know, 4-all in the second set tiebreaker. She comes up with an ace, a big forehand down the line winner after a long baseline rally, followed by a crushing service return winner to take that set. We also saw how many times throughout her career, even against Alia as well, down a break point or tight moment in a set, comes up with an ace. You'll like this, Steve. It brought back nightmares of Pete Sampras for me because as an Andre guy, right? Pistol Pete did that so many times.
He did, but you know, David, for all, you're absolutely right, and there were flashes of that.
Mm-hmm.
There was the sporadic brilliance, the sporadic big point prowess that we always knew Serena owned, and it also, the essential Serena was there in that last game to save all the match points, and she did it almost entirely with winners, and that's her. There's no doubt about it. But she can't do it on the consistent basis she once did, and I think in her heart she knew it. I think it's part of the reason she decided to retire. She knew that she just sensed that she doesn't have it in her anymore to put in that full of commitment, and also knows that you've got to play more. Yeah. And that's why she joked in the on-court interview about, I should have started sooner, because she did realize, as you alluded to, that she had played even a little better than she expected. And she's thinking to herself, if I would have just started back maybe during the clay court season, where would I be now? But there was a reason she didn't, because she wasn't ready to make the commitment. And there was a reason she lost here. It's because she knows that this is the right time to leave the game. And she went out stylishly. But
100%. I mean, yeah. We mirrored this. I tried to make the comparison, you know, to the Andre retirement in New York, and we can't compare it to Pete because no one knew it was Pete's last time playing in New York. He didn't announce that he wasn't going to play again, so we would compare it to Andre a little bit. They both won their first 2 matches. Again, they won their first round, then they upset a seed in their second round. The third round match where they both lost, completely different circumstances. Andre played in the day. He was hurt. He couldn't move. Serena played at night. Atmosphere was absolutely electric. And Serena played well. She just played against, like you referred to earlier, Alia Tomljanovic, who, my God, I mean, just from a mental fortitude standpoint, she was rock solid.
Oh,
and
no,
then
she handled it.
Add the tennis part to that. She played great. There was only a handful of people in the entire world that could have done what Alia did in that type of environment.
No, and she was very poised. She's not known for being the best player under pressure. That's no knock on her. A lot of players tend to wilt a bit under the pressure. No, she handled that beautifully. I will say this, though, not to knock Serena. The Konovac is not the second best player in the world right now, whether or not she's seeded 2. And people and Serena knows that. And I think she knew that. She knew it was a good win for sure. But it wasn't a typical win, a win typical of beating a number 2 seed, because Konovac has been in a slump since early in this season. So that has to be taken into account. And it kind of showed, it showed, because I think that Konovac got a bit tight in the first set tiebreak. And then she had a couple of break points in the third set that she couldn't convert, that could have put her back on serve. And one of them was in the third game, which could have gotten back to 1-2, and she missed a pretty easy forehand. So you could see that she was really apprehensive, and Serena exploited it to the hilt and played beautifully. But you feel like Konovate might be more like number 10 or 12 in the world right now, rather than 2.
Oh, agreed. I was just kind of saying they both had beaten a seed in their second round.
Yeah. Oh, no. And look, Andre Agassi beating Baghdadis, it was a terrific win, too. And he'd been in the finals of the Australian that year, Baghdadis. It was a great win, too. But I just feel like it was a fitting script. It kind of ended the way it probably should have ended, because they started talking, as you know, David, about a lot of people started asking her, what about winning the tournament? And so after she won the Konovate match, and Serena's like, well, I'm not thinking that far, which was the right thing to say and the right thing to feel. Realistically, even if the draw opened up as it was, she just wasn't up to winning 7 matches. I mean, yeah, physically she could have gotten stronger, but it would have just been a, more astounding feat than even Pete at the 2002 Open, when he'd had a difficult year and was seeded 17th, and he ends up winning the last tournament he'd ever play and beating Agassi in the finals. There were different circumstances because Pete was still playing that entire year.
Right.
And Andre, too. He was playing. He had lost to Nadal at Wimbledon. It wasn't sort of coming out of the blue. For Serena, she tried. I think she made up her mind after Wimbledon, thought, I didn't play too badly there. If I could just play a couple of hardcore tournaments, let's see what happens. And then those tournaments didn't go the way she wanted. So in that sense, it was a bonus. Imagine had she just bowed out in the first round here. That would have been for her very disconcerting and a very disappointing way to end it. So once she'd won 1 match, then it was going to be a pretty good ending. When she won 2, it was a terrific ending.
Yeah, I agree. And Mark Lucero, who's been on the pod before, he coaches Stevie Johnson, and he's coached some other players, professional players as well. He said the match with Alio was at the loudest on Ash since 2006, Andre and Baghdadis, and it very well could have been, because both those matches were the atmospheres in those matches were crazy. So it was interesting that he put that out there.
Yeah, I would say, especially just the feeling of sitting out there for the first round match. I think it was there from the opening bell for all 3 of her matches, comparably loud, and I'm sure that was very rewarding for her, emotionally rewarding, because she's had crowds get on her side for sure, but nothing quite like that. So she could take that with her, and I'm sure she will. I'm sure that the ringing of the applause in her ears will be there in the eye of her mind for a long time.
Well said. And, I feel like whatever we talk to now doesn't measure up to what we just talked about Serena, but we have to move on. Serena, great career. I mean, and again, I echo, Steve, all of your thoughts. Obviously, you've covered her entire career. Serena, well done and congratulations. And you've moved the needle, not just in tennis, but you've moved the needle in sports in a positive way. And congrats to you, and best of luck moving forward. With that, we'll move over a little bit to the men's side. Want to start with a match. Tommy Paul, Casper Ruud. And Tommy's had a good run this summer. He's had some really golden opportunities to even go further. He hasn't capitalized in all those opportunities. I think he's right there. We talked about mental fortitude. Here's an example. He splits the first 2 sets with Casper Ruud. He's up 6-5, 40-love in the 3rd set. Gets broken, loses that tiebreaker. You think he'd go away. He doesn't. He wins the 4th set before eventually running out of gas. Steve, I want to ask you, he's had a heck of a summer, and I think he's right there. And I think 2023 could be a spectacular year for Tommy Paul.
Yeah, I think so too. I think I'm sure I'm sure it will linger in his mind that he didn't serve that 3rd set out, because yes, gutsy and impressive that he could come back to win the 4th. But imagine if he does serve out the 3rd and he's up 2-1, pretty good chance for him to close. Maybe he would have closed it in 4. So again, there are opportunities eluding him that we've talked about over the summer that I'm sure are frustrating, but he's had some really good wins. He had a win over Alcarez over the summer. He's made immense strides over the course of this year. That could have been a real opportunity, though, because I think if Tommy would have won that match, he would have really had a great chance to get out to a quarterfinal against Berrettini or Davidovich Pina, one of them. The opening would have been there, and he knows it. His coach Brad Stein knows it. And listen, the crowd, everybody was looking forward. That Armstrong was filling up. I was there for the preceding match, and you could see that everybody was trying to get there early so they could watch the Tommy Paul match against Ruud, because it was clearly going to be probably more appealing than any match that was even played in Ash Stadium that day. And that place was, it was quite an atmosphere for Tommy. And obviously it's nice to play in front of your fans at home. He just couldn't quite pull it off. And I'm sure he's disappointed that the fifth set was so one-sided.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with Americans. And I know we talked about it in our preceding episode. Brandon Holt, Tracy Austin's son, he had a very nice run. He upset Taylor Fritz. Had to be terribly disappointing for Taylor. Taylor even said, in this press conference after, I felt like an idiot thinking I could win the tournament. I mean, Taylor, like you said in the previous episode, was a whisker away from making the semis of Wimbledon, and he's been playing great. Disappointing for Taylor. Great win for Brandon. Brandon lost a crusher in the second round. But Americans, again, you have to, I mean, I know your relationship with Tracy, you've known her a long time. You had to feel good for Tracy and Brandon.
Of course, and for their whole family. And I'm sure it was hard for Tracy to watch, because Brandon, here he's won a string of 3 straight 3-set matches in the qualifying, which of course are best of 3. So they all went the distance. And then he comes back against Taylor really nicely to win in 4. And he wins the first 2 sets of his second round match, 6-1, 6-2. But then 2 of the last 3 sets he lost in breakers, and he was up a break in the 4th set before that one got away. So that was, I'm sure, a harrowing defeat for him, but a great learning experience, because you realize, okay, everything went my way until then, and I thought I was cruising. He probably was envisioning a place in the 3rd round of the U.S. Open, and it got away. Not that he collapsed. I mean, 2 of those last 3 sets were exceedingly close, but it'll be a lesson that you can't take anything for granted. And that of course, I'm sure the one thing that Tracy would drum in is it really doesn't matter whether you win those sets 6-1, 6-2, or 7-6, 7-6. The value is the same. And it can be misleading in your mind when you win sets that easily. But I think he takes so much away from this Open, having qualified, having beaten Fritz. And I'm really fascinated to follow him in the months ahead and into next year to see what he can do with this.
Oh, 100%. And sticking with the Americans, second year in a row, unfortunate, because he came out on fire in both his first round matches, both last year and this year. Jack Sock, if you remember last year, he played Sasha Zverev, came out on fire for the first set and a half, got hurt, couldn't finish that match. This year he plays Diego Schwartzman, wins the first 2 sets, back locks up, can't move, has to default. We've all known the talent is there. The firepower is definitely there, but hopefully he can continue to get stronger physically and last in these 3 out of 5 set matches.
I hope so. Although I think it's kind of chronic with him, David. I worry about that. But I do think, he'll have a lot more double success if he wants it. And there'll be sporadic brilliance in singles, and he can, and certainly the main tour events, best of 3, he's got a much better chance of standing, a match like that, or the Zverev one a year ago. Maybe he wins it if it's in Cincinnati or somewhere else. It's best of 3. And he's really vulnerable in these best of 5 set matches, and the other players know it. But it was another impressive showing. I mean, 2 years in a row to be playing at that level and putting himself potentially in a position to win and not being able to pull it off. Well, I hope that's not the last we'll see of Jack at that level, and but we're going to find out. I don't think he's comes away totally discouraged by losing like that, and I think we'll still see more of him in the future.
And the last American we want to talk about before we get into a few of the round of 16 matchups, JJ Wolf. Great tournament for JJ. Beats Batista Agut in straight sets.
Yeah.
Kyrios was just too good for him the other night. But JJ Wolf, again, fair showing, very, very good showing for a kid from Midwestern state of Ohio.
No, I enjoyed watching him. I actually, it was Batista Agut maybe slightly past his prime going in. I wouldn't have thought he could win that match. That was a great win. I didn't see much of that. I saw a lot of the Kyrios match. And what I liked was he never gave up. He lost in straight. He kept, but every time he'd hold his serve in the 3rd set and stay in there, you'd see him getting all pumped up, and the attitude was excellent. And I feel, he definitely takes something. He's had just a good summer period, and it's nice for him to beat a player of Bautista Agut's caliber. So I expect some big things from him during the autumn as well.
Well, let's get started on some of the, we're not going to go over every one of them because I know you got to get going and get back on site. But I'll mention a few of the round of 16 matchups, and I'll get your quick hits on them. Obviously the big one tonight, Sunday night, Daniil Medvedev, Nick Kyrios. Your quick thoughts on that, and does the winner of that match win the entire tournament, knowing Rafa's on the other side?
That's a great question. I tend to think that the winner of that match will be in the finals. Yes. The way I look at it now, depending on Nadal's physical condition, and Rafa looked better in the third round. Gasquet is always an easy, it's 18-0 now, and it's you have a comfort level against him because of the dominance, of course, over the course of their careers. But physically, he just looked better to me too. And I think he felt good about that. But again, projecting, I would still say that either Medvedev or Kyrios, in my mind, would be the underdog against Rafa. That's a strange thing to say about Medvedev as the defending champion, but I feel he's still haunted by the loss to Rafa in Australia in the finals, when it looked like he was headed inexorably toward a second straight Grand Slam tournament victory. Went up 2-0, 3-2, love 40 in the third. So almost broke the match open in the middle of the third, and eventually lost 7-5 in the fifth. Because after that, Rafa beat him very decisively in Acapulco in the semifinals, and they haven't met since. And then Daniel has played well since, but he hasn't been that confident. He won Los Cabos at the start of the summer. So the match with Nick will be fascinating, and Nick is a 3-1 record against him. Daniel did beat him in Australia, but Nick is playing much better now than he was in Australia, and he's much.
Who's winning, Steve? Who's winning this match?
Well, you're putting me on the spot. I'm gonna take a chance. I'm gonna say Kyrios in 4.
Yeah,
but
I would probably echo your thought. He's just playing so well right now.
But I don't say it with a lot of confidence, because I think Medvedev is going to be determined to strike back at him and determined to turn it into a physical war as well.
And I think a lot of people have been talking about Daniil. A lot of that is he's been on court so late. The last few matches he's played after Serena at night. So he's going about his business quietly. I agree with you. I would say Kyrios in 4, but I don't have a lot of confidence saying that as well, because Daniil, I mean,
but I think Medvedev has to make it extremely physical, and make Nick hit a ton of balls, keep moving him side to side, try to get to his legs, try to wear him down. Won't be able to do that in Nick's service games very often, because there'll be too many aces flying past him. The other interesting part is when Nick beat him over the summer on the hard courts, he served and volleyed a lot. I'm interested to see if he replicates that pattern, and whether Daniel adjusts his position on the return of serve from so far back. He didn't adjust at all the last time, and it killed him. So I think Nick will probably start off with that game plan, and if it's not working, he'll change. But I think we'll see him come in a lot behind his serve and pressure Daniel. Can't wait to see that match.
Will be so entertaining. On the other side of the draw, a match that we're going to talk about TFO and Rafa in a minute, but Cam Norrie and Andre Rublev. Rublev beat Shapo in 5 yesterday. Cam Norrie, another guy, he just goes about his business. He doesn't beat himself. He's had a great couple, the past couple of years have been great. He's a tough out. That match against Rublev is going to be a good one, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a real coin flip. It's a real coin flip. I mean, as was the Rublev match against Shapovalov that you just alluded to, going to the 5th set tiebreak, the extended 10 super tiebreak, extended 10-pointer, and that they're using now in the final set of all these majors. And it's a confidence builder, to be sure, for Rublev to get through it, but he knows he could be in for an equally tough match against a totally different kind of left-hander this time. I mean, Shapovalov is that flashy shot maker, going for broke and hitting spectacular winners and making inexplicable errors. But that's not the way Cam Norrie plays tennis. So this one will be interesting to see if Rublev can hit through him, David. I think it's potentially another 5-setter. His explosive ground game, his power versus the guile and the craft of Norrie.
Yeah, I don't know. I may be the slightest lean towards Cam, but I'm with you.
Yeah.
That's good. That's pretty much a pick 'em. TFO and Rafa again. Francis, we said it earlier yesterday against Schwartzman. That's a match that if these American guys want to take that next step, you have to get through. Francis plays Rafa. It's going to be entertaining. I believe Rafa's 2-0 against him. They haven't played a ton of times.
No, you know what, David? You're right. He is 2-0, but those matches were 3 years ago. Francis is a different player right now.
Yeah.
So I don't put a lot of stock in that. He got killed by Rafa in Australia and decisively beaten one other time. I don't think it really means a thing, because that's not to say that I'm picking Francis to win it. I just think it'll be a much closer, hard fought contest. In the end, I would go with Rafa in 4 sets. You know, his percentage play, I think, in the end, and I think he'll also physically Francis will have to work awfully hard. But I think this will be an entirely different kind of match. Plus, we know that Tiafoe will play to the crowd, as he always does, in a very beguiling way. And Rafa, as he said himself in one of his interviews yesterday after the win over Gasquet, they're always respectful of him. On the other hand, he won't get the usual brand of crowd support that he receives. So it would be a little bit unnerving at times when Francis is waving his arms to the crowd and they're euphoric and they're exhilarated. That's going to be a very enjoyable match. In the end, I still go for Rafa, but much closer contest than their previous 2.
And I want to end on the men's side talking about everybody's favorite, especially the last year and a half, Carlos Alcaraz. He's on the top side of Rafa's side of the bracket. The potential is a Friday semifinal, Carlos Alcaraz versus Rafa Nadal. There's some matches that have to happen first, but that would be a tasty semifinal, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, I hope we can get it. I really hope we can get it. I like the way Carlos is playing, particularly like the way that he pulled out the 3rd set from 2 breaks down against Brooksby. It looked for sure to be going 4 sets, because Brooksby broke twice to go up 3-love in the 3rd. And then Carlos reels off 6 straight games in 6 magnificent games on his part, 24 out of 31 points in that span. He was amazing. So I hope we get it, because I think that all Spanish confrontation would be a dandy. I mean, we saw them playing a couple of times early this year, with Carlos losing on an incredibly windy day out in Indian Wells to Rafa in the semis. Then he beat him on the clay. Rafa was not at his best there, so I don't put too much stock in it, but at least it gave Carlos the belief that he can beat him. And I could see potentially a 5-set collision if they were to meet in the semifinal round.
Let me ask you this, and I just thought of it off the top of my head. I want to go to the women's side of the draw. With Serena ending her career, most likely U.S. Open. You look at Coco Gauff right now, what she did to Madison Keys in the previous round. Coco Gauff has a good draw, and she may have to. I mean, I see her coming out her quarter, and if she plays Ons Jabeur potentially in the semi, that would be a good one. But I think Coco Gauff should easily make the semis. The way she's played the last couple matches, I would not be shocked if she wins this whole thing.
No, I wouldn't either. But the match that I would be concerned about for her would be the quarterfinal if she played Garcia. Garcia has still got to beat Allison Risk Armitage, which won't be easy. But if it was Garcia, who's really on a good roll lately and playing some of the best tennis of her career, I could see Coco. That could be pretty hard fought. But otherwise, yeah, I think this is a tremendous opportunity for Coco, and she really did pick apart Madison, totally picked her apart in straight sets, and she's playing confidently, and she's not double faulting too much, not too many lapses. The forehand looking for her pretty solid, so I will follow her with great interest. But I would love to see her play Garcia. I hope we get that match.
You can get possibly Garcia, then possibly Jabeur in the semi, which will be could be fun to watch too. On the other side, 2 players that have been playing very well. I think Victoria Azarenka, you obviously know her experience. She's been here many a time. She's been playing great. Another American who's been playing great, Jessica Pegula, right? It took her 3 sets yesterday. She had match points in the second, but then she cruised in the third. Azarenka, Pegula, and then you also have Swiatek. Lauren Davis played Swiatek last night. Lauren was up 4-1 in the second. Another tennis pro from Ohio. Didn't quite get through, but Swiatek, Pegula, Azarenka. Danielle Collins won late last night. Sabalenka. I'm not sure if the winner of the tournament comes from this side. I mean, obviously, Swiatek's the top seed, but there's some good matches still. A lot of good matches left on the women's side.
Yeah, I do think if Swiatek, it's an open question whether she gets to the final. She still doesn't look entirely confident. You alluded to the second set with Davis, which she didn't play that well in the second, but she pulled it out. But if she did make it to the finals, I think the confidence would be there. And she won in the French Open, was so dominant through the French and winning 37 matches in a row in that stretch of the season. And so I would like her chances if she gets there. I'm just not sure she's going to get there. But listen, you mentioned Pegula. She's going to play Kvitova next. Kvitova had a wonderful comeback against Muguruza yesterday. I watched most of that match. Muguruza had 5-2 in the third set. She had some match points at 6-5, and then eventually lost it in the tiebreak, a really hard-fought, long tiebreak. And Kvitova scraped through that, but I still like Pegula's chances with her. You know, she's so sound, and she'll work Petra so hard from the backcourt that I do like Pegula's chances to win that, but I wouldn't necessarily like her chances against Swiatek. So we could get that as a quarterfinal, and then Azarenka's playing Pliskova, who had a nice win over Bencic.
Yes.
Came from behind to beat her, and then we're going to have Collins playing Sabalenka to possibly play the winner Azarenka Pliskova. I don't even want to begin to speculate on the potential down here because there's so many toss up matchups.
Right. Yeah. Well, hey, I know I appreciate your time. I know you want to get out on site, so I'm gonna let you go. Before we do that, Steve, any final thoughts you have? Unless something crazy happens, most likely the next time we speak will be on maybe next Monday when we have a winner. Obviously, if something crazy happens, we'll try to do something before. But before I let you go, any final thoughts? What are you looking forward to today, tomorrow, the second week?
No, I mean, we just all those matchups we just talked about. There's so many good women's matchups. I'm looking forward to seeing whether Carlos can who made such a deep impression here last year when he beat Tsitsipas and reached the quarters. It was almost an announcement of his future greatness. I'll be watching him closely to see Rafa maybe sensing this might be his last big chance to win the Open. I'm not going to say the last big chance to win a major, because I think if he went back to Roland Garros on one leg next year, he'd still probably win the tournament. So, but here, I don't know. He sees all these litany of injuries he's had, and he really wants to take advantage of this last chance. I'm watching him closely. I can't wait to see what happens down the home stretch of this tournament.
He generally does play better come the second week of the Sams, and he's going to have to play better because he has not played up to his standard during the first 3 rounds.
No, well, it's a little hard to judge him against Gasquet, who played a pretty abysmal first 2 sets, and Richard with game points or break points, all but one game in the first set, and still loses at 6-love. So yes, and then Rafa didn't play terribly well in the third, which he finally won 7-5. In the previous 2 matches,
he had a horrible start against Fognini the first couple. First set and a half.
Down 6-2, 4-2 to Fognini. I think he was fortunate. Fognini collapsed and Rafa sort of gathered himself, but he physically, he didn't look right to me there. I don't know what the problem was. That's where I was slightly encouraged about Gasquet, is that the movement and I just felt like nothing seemed to be holding him back physically. He could play a little better, but it was much more, he was much closer to the real Rafa in that match, at least. But you're right. He's going to have to keep taking it up and not starting with Tiafoe. And we'll see. But I just think he's pretty powerfully driven to win his 5th US Open.
Amazing. You got to get out there. I'll let you go. Steve, thanks so much for your time early this morning. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, David. Enjoyed it.